all attending the Coping with Anxiety webinar today. I am Christine Kritzas. I'm a counseling psychologist from LightHouse Arabia, and I'm looking forward to spending the next hour with all of you speaking about such a relevant, pertinent topic like anxiety. We will be covering coping with COVID-19 anxiety, as well as anxiety in general that people feel just as we still move through unprecedented times, as we still don't know what the future holds in terms of vaccines and just in general what is happening in the world when it comes to lockdown, when it comes to online learning, when it comes to restructuring in organizations, in companies, people leaving, people staying, and just having to deal with all of these day-to-day adjustments. So I'm really looking forward to us spending the hour together. Just some general housekeeping. You will all notice that there is a control panel at the bottom of your screens. If during the webinar you have any questions or any comments around anxiety, please feel free to pop your questions into the Q&A section. I am going to allow 15 minutes at the end of the webinar for us to address those questions. This session is recorded, so it will be shared with you post-webinar. I am now going to share my deck with you. Can I just see a show of hands? Can you all see and hear me clearly? Wonderful. I always need to ask that question. So if you just give me a moment, I'm going to share the deck with you. Right, so I am well acquainted with the topic of anxiety for two reasons. First reason being that over the past 12 years that I've been working in private practice, I've worked extensively with adults as well as children struggling with anxiety. The second reason I'm well acquainted with it is that I myself have my own relationship with anxiety. Since I was a five-year-old, I struggled with anxiety, and I had to learn ways to cope with the anxiety that I was struggling with. And so I had to develop an imaginary toolbox with tools to help deal with difficult stresses. And what we know is that when a person's coping mechanisms are outweighed by their stresses, when the scale tilts, one is more vulnerable to experiencing an episode of anxiety. And so what we would like to achieve in a webinar like this is to upskill you, to give you some effective tools to put into that imaginary toolbox of yours. Because let's face it, you wouldn't have survived up until now if you didn't have tools in your toolbox. So you already have some tools. You wouldn't have survived 2020 if you didn't have things to fall back on. So we're just going to look at, are those tools effective? Do we need to throw some of those tools out? Do we need to look at putting some new tools in your toolbox? And so I would want you to start small. I would want you to pick one tool from the talk that I do today and start using that, and then add more to your toolbox. Right. So just a bit about the LightHouse Arabia. We're a mental health and wellbeing center located in central Dubai. We offer psychological services and psychiatric care to individuals across the lifespan. And we have community at the heart of everything that we do. We run online support groups. We have taken our therapy sessions online. So you are free to check out our website and learn more about LightHouse. Without any further delay, I would want us to look at the agenda for today. Understanding anxiety, understanding how anxiety shows up in the brain, and then ways in which we can cope with or confront anxiety, as well as COVID-19 anxiety. So when we think of anxiety and the brain, something I want us to remember is that we all have anxiety. Anxiety is a normal human emotion. If you didn't have anxiety, that would be a problem, because anxiety is the very emotion that keeps you safe. It alerts you to danger. If it is that you have a big brown bear charging you, your anxiety is going to kick in and you're going to need to act in that situation. Anxiety also helps us to meet work deadlines. It helps us to perform at our best. Okay, so we all have it. This idea that you either have it or you don't needs to be put to rest. Okay, it's in our wiring. It's not either good or bad. And I just need to explain the difference between fear and anxiety. Fear is a stress response to an immediate threat in our environment. Let's say you are walking in the shopping center and you are standing in the queue waiting to pay, and a lady next to you isn't wearing a mask and she sneezes very nearby to you. In that moment, it may bring about a feeling of fear because of the coronavirus, because we don't know, does this person have the virus? Have they tested positive? They just sneezed on me. That is fear. It's an immediate threat in your environment. However, anxiety is something that is future-based, okay? It's an anticipated threat in your environment. It's something that we anticipate may happen. You may be sitting at home and you think to yourself, I'm not sure if I should go to Spinneys today. What if I'm standing in the queue and someone sneezes on me and they were positive and then I become positive? So it's something that we make up in our minds, okay, that we believe to be true. And so if we do not manage the anxiety, it then can be very taxing on the mind and body. And what we know is that anxiety, if it's left untreated, it can spiral into depression, okay? I want you to think about anxiety as falling on this continuum, with no anxiety on the one side of the continuum and clinical anxiety and panic-like symptoms on the other side of the continuum. Imagine if you had no anxiety. It would be so dangerous. You'd walk around during a pandemic, not wearing a mask, high-fiving people in the supermarket, hugging people when you see them. And that in itself can be quite dangerous in actually carrying the virus over to somebody else. So no anxiety is not good, okay? But clinical anxiety isn't either healthy for us. So what we need to understand is that we want to find ourselves somewhere in the middle. It's normal for you to worry about a presentation that you're doing in 2 days' time. It's normal for you to feel anxiety when you get to the airport and you hear that your flight is delayed and you might miss your connecting flight to the next destination. It's normal for you to worry when you order a dress online and 6 weeks later it still hasn't arrived yet. True story, I'm not doing online shopping anymore. These things are normal things that we may worry about from time to time. However, when it moves into the red zone, when we find that our anxiety starts to impact on our day-to-day functioning, where we are struggling to fall asleep at night, where we don't want to go to work because we fear having to do a certain task, where we are avoiding social situations because of some sort of anxiety that we have about being in social situations, that is when we need to be on the lookout, when it starts to impair our functioning. So what is happening in the body when we experience anxiety? I think it's important that we understand what happens in the body. And so when we are faced with an anticipated threat in our environment or an immediate threat in our environment, it can activate the fight or flight stress response in us. And what we know is that the coronavirus pandemic has activated the fight or flight stress response in majority of us in varying degrees. So what happens when we go into fight or flight mode? And what is fight or flight mode? Flight or flight mode is our body's inbuilt survival mechanism. It's a defense mechanism that helps us and protects us from immediate danger. So if it is that you have a big brown bear charging you, your fight or flight stress response is going to be activated in that moment. And what happens then is that the body releases two hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. And it releases those hormones into the system. Your breathing becomes deeper, your heart palpitations take place, blood leaves the smaller muscle groups and moves to the larger muscle groups so that your body can take flight, so you can run away from that big brown bear. But then something else happens in the body. When we go into fight or flight mode, the body has to restore as much energy as possible. So what happens is it starts to shut down long-term projects such as the digestive system, because when you are in survival mode, your body isn't worrying about digesting food. You might become somebody else's food. So your body's not worried about digesting your own food. You just need to run, okay? So the digestive system shuts down, which uses up 30 to 40% of our energy. So that shuts down. The growth hormone shuts down. Ovaries in women shut down. Now, what happens when we are in fight or flight mode for more days than not, over months on end? It starts to manifest in the physical body. And that is why people who experience long-term stress develop ulcers, onset of cancer, they experience GI issues, onset of diabetes too, heart disease. So these things manifest in the physical body if we are in fight or flight mode for more days than not. Important that we note that, important that we understand that. But something that Professor Robert Sapolsky from Stanford University notes very clearly, and he's done a lot of research on the topic of stress, is that human beings are the only species that are able to activate their fight or flight stress response through thought alone. So guess what? You don't need a big brown bear to be charging you to activate your fight or flight stress response. You can just be sitting in a boardroom meeting with your MD, and he turns to you and he says, the client wasn't happy with that proposal of yours, and we're actually looking to restructure the organization. And immediately you start thinking, I'm going to lose my job. And then the fight or flight stress response is activated. Or you could be on holiday in the Maldives. I say the Maldives because I've seen many people have been traveling to the Maldives now lately. You could be on holiday in the Maldives and you just have blue skies and blue water in front of you, nothing to stress you out. And you just think about a presentation that you have due in 3 weeks' time, and you can activate the fight or flight stress response. So we can switch it on like this, but we can also switch it off. And today I'm going to teach you how we can go about switching it off, okay? So just something for us to note is that anxiety in the brain looks as follows. Dan Siegel, who's a clinical professor from UCLA, speaks about the hand model of the brain, and he speaks about flipping your lid. So I'm going to explain to you briefly what that is. Imagine that this is your brain. This is your brain stem. This part of the brain is this part of the brain here, which is your frontal lobe, your higher cortex. Okay, it's responsible for executive functioning, decision-making, emotional regulation, planning. When we go into fight or flight mode, this part of the brain goes offline, okay? This part of the brain here, the thumb, is the amygdala, which is that tiny almond-like structure in the brain, which makes up the limbic brain, the primitive part of the brain, the part where we experience emotion. And so when it is that we go into fight or flight mode, when we are highly stressed, we flip our lids. The higher order thinking goes offline and you start thinking from the primitive part of your brain. And that's why you sometimes look at people and you think, what are they thinking? Like they are so angry or they're so stressed that you can't get through to them. They shut down because they have shut down. And so the higher cortex has been disabled. Okay, so when we are in high emotion, we may experience total withdrawal, where we shut down. We may become avoidant. We may become angry and irritable. So just important for us to understand what's happening in the brain, that when you hear life-threatening news, or you hear stressful news about something, you may go offline. You may not be thinking straight. And so you may need to find a way to bring that higher order thinking back online before you make that next decision. Okay? And something that we need to know as well is that between stimulus and response lies our freedom to choose. Sometimes we experience a stimulus, like our MD saying to us, the client didn't like that proposal that you made. That stimulus then brings about a response to that situation. Sometimes we react to situations, and the difference between reacting and responding is that reacting is a knee-jerk reaction. Responding means that we allow ourselves the space to choose how we're going to behave in that moment. And so we want to move towards responding in situations and not reacting in situations. Okay, because reactive responses are very emotion-based, they're feelings-driven. Okay, they make us look back and go, what was I thinking? Why did I say that? Whereas proactive responses come from a place of choice, a place of being aligned with our values, where we are strategic in our thinking. And Viktor Frankl, who was the author of the book Man's Search for Meaning, speaks about how people can take away everything from you. But the one thing that they cannot take away from you is your power to choose, your freedom to choose how you will respond in every given moment. And if you want to be able to have that freedom to choose, something that helps with this is meditation. Because in meditation, we don't just react to things that happen immediately. We learn how to sit with difficult emotions when we're sitting in a meditation. We can sit with the boredom, the irritation that comes up, and just sit with it. We're not going to react immediately during a meditation. Translate that to real life. You're sitting in the boardroom with your MD, and he says something about the client, and in that moment you feel anxiety come up. You don't have to react in that moment. You can just sit with that anxiety and let it process itself. Okay, and so meditation helps us to respond more and to react less in situations. So what are some symptoms of anxiety? As I share this with you, I want you to know that in order to make a diagnosis of anxiety, we need to have a cluster of symptoms present. We need to have, we need to look at the severity, the frequency, and the duration of those symptoms in order to make that diagnosis. Severity, are these symptoms mild, moderate, or severe? Frequency, how often is this person experiencing these symptoms? And duration, how long does this person experience these symptoms for? Okay, so when we look at these symptoms, there may be some psychological symptoms that a person experiences, like catastrophic thinking, thinking worst case scenario. They may make use of some defense mechanisms, making light of situations. We often see some memes circulating around the coronavirus, around things that are happening in world politics. And that's a way of people, lightening the load of what is happening around them. People may dissociate, so just, shut down and not make as though it's not happening at all. They may experience numbing behaviors where there's endless scrolling on Netflix just to numb the emotions, or they may intellectualize what's happening around them. I don't know if you have a family member, but I do have a family member who will often post, latest updates around the vaccine, and this is the vaccine that you should take, this is the vaccine you shouldn't take. And so the more information they have, the more in control they feel, so they intellectualize everything. Behaviorally, what we may see with individuals who experience anxiety, believe it or not, those individuals who you think are control freaks actually experience the most anxiety. People who are very controlling in their nature are actually quite anxious. They like to control their environment because that makes them feel safe and secure. Or there may be people going out and panic buying again, or hoarding, or experiencing anger outbursts or restlessness, On an emotional level, we often see that people who present with irritable mood actually have an underlying anxiety, right? They may also experience helplessness and hopelessness. On the cognitive front, we find that sometimes a person who experiences anxiety is quite forgetful, has memory problems, inability to concentrate, difficulty focusing on a task at hand, negative focus, poor judgment, right? So these are some of the symptoms. Now, how do we confront anxiety? How do we confront, the coronavirus anxiety? So when I'm speaking about confronting coronavirus anxiety, I'm speaking about confronting anxiety per se, right? Because this is helpful in us learning how to confront all types of anxiety, right? So the first thing is a willingness and acceptance of what is. We know that what you resist will persist. If you keep pushing things away, they're just going to come back stronger. A lot of our energy often goes into not wanting to feel something. But you must remember something. You cannot switch off the emotion of anxiety. When you switch off one emotion, you switch off all emotions, which means you switch off positive emotions too. So it's important that we learn how to sit with our difficult emotions when they come up. Neuroanatomist Jill Bolt Taylor speaks about a 90-second rule. She says that it's a proven fact that our bodies have a chemical process of experiencing an emotion, and that chemical process only lasts 90 seconds. So when we experience anxiety, it is supposed to last only 90 seconds. When we experience anger, sadness, fear, these feelings are only supposed to sit with us for 90 seconds. The reason they sit with us for longer is because we attach a story to it. So let's say I have the thought that I might not be able to travel for the second year in a row during the summer. And then I feel anxious about it. And then I attach another story to it, which is, you know what, I'm not going to see my family for 2 years, and I'm going to miss my sister's wedding, and I start attaching a story to it. I make it bigger and bigger and bigger, and so then the feeling loops in the body for longer. Okay. Another thing we need to understand is that we need to have a soft front and a strong back. Soft front meaning open yourself up to feeling your feelings. Be vulnerable. Feel the anxiety. Feel the pain. Feel the sadness. Sit with what is. Because when we have that willingness to accept, the feelings will come and go. We will process the emotions. Have a strong back to know that you've got this, that you will be able to deal with this. Okay? So soft front, strong back, and acceptance for what is. Vagus nerve healing. I find this so fascinating. The vagus nerve is the second largest nerve in our bodies. It is the nerve that makes up the parasympathetic nervous system. It is also known as the wandering nerve. It attaches from the base of the brain to vital organs in the body, such as the heart, the liver, the gut. Okay, and when we speak about mind-body connection, we're actually referring to the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve links the brain to the gut. We know that 90% of our serotonin is formed in the gut. So when we want to look at mood and how what we eat influences how we feel, this is vagus nerve connection, mind-body, okay? So how do we stimulate our vagal tone? Because we know that low vagal tone has been associated with inflammation, with depression, with anxiety. So how do we stimulate vagal tone? How do we get our vagal tone up again? One way is exposure to cold. So taking a cold shower, okay, can really help with activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest system. Humming is also known to help increase vagal tone because it activates the vocal cords, which are linked to the vagus nerve. So when you hum, more specifically, when you hum Om. We know Om is the frequency of the universe. And so this also helps with increasing our vagal tone. Singing is also very helpful when it comes to increasing vagal tone. And if you are anything of a singer like myself, I would suggest that you sing in the shower. While you're taking that cold shower, engage in your singing exercise, because your family are not going to like me very much if I'm promoting singing on your end and you don't have the voice for it. So these are some things we can do. Meditation is another thing that we can look to do. It also helps with activating the rest or digest nervous system. Okay. Self-soothing exercises. Be kind to your body. When clients come in and they meet with me and we realize that they are struggling with anxiety, the first thing I say to them is, let's focus on the physical body. I'm not going to do anything over here. I want to know what's happening over here. I want to know, how many hours of sleep are you getting? First and foremost, are you getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night? And can I see a show of hands quick? How many of you are getting your 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night? Okay. And now, can I see a show of hands? How many of you get less than 6 hours of sleep a night? How many of you get less than 6 hours of sleep? Or less than 5 hours of sleep a night? Okay. So something that I would really suggest you look into is your sleep hygiene for a start, because we know that lack of sleep is linked to anxiety, linked to depression, okay, linked to inflammation, right? So there's also a direct link between a lack of sleep and formation of Alzheimer's, okay? So we need to know that sleep is really important. Limit your caffeine intake. Caffeine and anxiety are best mates. They love hanging out together, right? When the one's around, the other one's around. If you are drinking cups and cups of coffee a day, it's just going to exacerbate your symptoms of anxiety, because caffeine is a stimulant, okay? It also brings about heart palpitations. Red Bull, I don't know if any of you drink Red Bull. I would recommend you don't, because that is a big no-no when it comes to anxiety. Exercise is key. We know that exercise at least 3 times a week for 30 minutes is the equivalent to a mild, is equivalent to an antidepressant for treating mild to moderate symptoms of anxiety and depression. Eating nutritious foods, we know mood food, very important. Calming your mind, positive affirmations. This too shall pass. I am safe. I'm doing the best that I can with what I've got right now. Still yourself. Get into a meditative practice. Download the Calm app, the Headspace app. These are great things. Take a break from the news. Take a break from social media. If it stresses you out, stop going online. Soothe your soul, engage in a spiritual practice, get creative, get playful. The best way to be in the present moment is to spend time with children. Children are masters of the present moment. They know how to get into a playful state and be in that playful state. So mimic what they're doing. Dealing with a panic attack. First and foremost, it's important to know the signs of a panic attack. Important to know that when someone goes into a panic attack, it's usually that they're experiencing heart palpitations, sweaty palms, heavy breathing, tightness in the chest, nausea. They may experience the sweaty palms, as I said, and they may experience these symptoms for 10 minutes or more, okay? And the hallmark symptom of a panic attack is that it can occur out of nowhere. But it's important to know that a panic attack is always going to ride its course. And it's important that when you are experiencing a panic attack, that you can engage in comforting self-talk, that you can say, I'm experiencing panic right now. I know this is not dangerous and I can't die from it. I'm safe. This will pass. And I'm going to say that you can engage in breathing exercises. You can breathe in a brown paper bag. You can engage in positive self-talk, but the panic attack is still going to ride its course. But by engaging in these exercises and by doing something where you feel like you have control over what's happening, it just makes you feel better in that moment. So 4-7-8 breathing is a great way to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. 4-7-8 breathing goes as follows. You breathe in for 4 seconds through your nose. You hold for 7 seconds to allow time for the oxygen to move into the bloodstream and to be saturated in the bloodstream. And then you breathe out for 8 seconds through the mouth. This helps to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. So engaging in a breathing exercise can be beneficial here. Grounding yourself. It may be that you engage in mindful hand washing, mindful eating, bringing yourself back to the present moment because this is the only moment that you have. Take a short walk. Engage in a grounding exercise. So grounding, aka earthing, is a therapeutic technique which involves activities that ground and electrically reconnect you to the earth. So it's important that you walk barefoot on the grass, on the sand, and increase that skin to earth contact, whether it is that you do the barefoot walking or you lie on grass or you sit on sand. This will provide you with the grounding energy. Because they're electrical charges from the earth that can have a positive effect on our body. They can have a positive effect on inflammation, on mood, on chronic pain, right? So we also want to focus on your 5 senses. So have a look around your room. When you're feeling overwhelmed, just ground yourself through the 5 senses. Have a look around the room. Ask yourself, what are 5 things that I can see right now? What are 4 things that I can hear? What are 3 things that I can touch? What are 2 things I can smell? What's 1 thing I can taste? Okay. Aromatherapy, we know, is super beneficial. Any spa that you walk into anywhere in the world has got the most beautiful scents. Why? Because they know that when they burn lavender oils or lemongrass, this helps with soothing the system down. Salt baths, specifically Epsom salt baths, are very, very beneficial for magnesium absorption. And we know that magnesium absorption helps with reducing inflammation, muscle aches, and tension. And then orient yourself in the here and now. And it may, it may feel a bit weird when you do it. So for example, I'll do it right now. My name is Kritzas. I'm a counseling psychologist. I was born in South Africa. I have Greek heritage. I am 37 years old. When I finish this webinar, I'm going into a meeting with my team. This is how we ground ourselves, okay? I just told myself something I know about myself, but it brought me back to this moment. Okay. And then something that I often share with my clients is focus on things that are within your control, because when you focus on things that are outside of your control, that's when you feel helpless, hopeless, and very anxious. So what are things that I can't control? I can't control the attitudes or expectations of others, or the demands of my colleagues, or when the vaccines will be available to the public, or if others follow the rules of social distancing, or if the schools decide to engage in online learning again. But what I can control is my freedom to choose how I will respond in that moment, my optimistic attitude, how well prepared I am for things, setting healthy boundaries with people, planning fun-filled activities, following the rules myself, how I manage my finances. These are all within my control. And knowing your triggers. There is a psychological phenomenon known as the emotional contagion theory. Has it ever happened to you that you go for coffee with a friend and you leave that coffee date and you feel so drained and you think to yourself, my gosh, they're so negative. I feel drained. Or has it ever happened that you go for coffee with a friend and you leave feeling energetic and inspired and motivated? That's no coincidence. It's called the emotional contagion theory. It means that, we can transmit emotions to one another non-verbally in any given moment. And so it's so important that you choose wisely who you spend your time with, because you will be influenced and you will experience what it is that that person is feeling. If you are an empath, if you're a highly sensitive person, you're going to pick up on their emotions, you're going to carry their emotions. And so very important that you're spending time with people who are optimistic. Guard your energy, set clear boundaries with these people, whether it be over WhatsApp, whether it be that, you don't meet up with them 5 times a month, you only meet up with them once a month, because they are very negative and draining. Observe, don't absorb. There's a beautiful technique where you can learn how to observe the person in front of you who's being negative or challenging or critical, rather than absorbing what it is that they're saying to you. Imagine you've got this gold shield around your body, and every time this person speaks, their words are just deflecting off of that gold shield, and they're not penetrating your mind. So learning how to observe people like a movie playing out in front of you, as opposed to absorbing their energy. And know that energy flows where attention goes. If you're spending time thinking about how critical others are and how judging others are, you're going to feel the effects of that. So focus your energy on things that make you feel good. Observing your thoughts, creating distance between you and the thoughts that you think. Remembering that you are not your thoughts. It's you, and then there are the thoughts that you think. And so a way of creating distance between you and your thoughts is to preface your thoughts with, I'm having the thought, what if I get asked to leave the company? I'm having the thought, what if the vaccine doesn't work? I'm having the thought, what if I can't travel home to see my family in the summer for the 2nd year in a row? And then end it off with saying to yourself, and that's just a thought. That's not a fact. Okay? So create distance between you and the thoughts that you think. And tend to your emotions. Name it to tame it. Label your emotions. Dan Siegel, that clinical professor from UCLA that I spoke about earlier, that speaks about the hand model of the brain, and he speaks about flipping your lid. A way to bring that higher order thinking back online is to name your emotions. So when you are feeling highly stressed, or you're feeling sad, or you're feeling angry, it really helps to label the emotion, to say, right now I'm feeling sad, right now I'm feeling angry, right? I'm also the creator of a children's board game named Smart Heart, which aims at facilitating emotional intelligence in kids. And in this game, we teach children a broader emotional vocabulary. But a lot of adults don't know more than 3 emotions. A majority of adults know happy, sad, and angry. Okay, they don't know when they're feeling other emotions. So it's really important that you broaden your emotional vocabulary here, and that you look at downloading the Google Feelings Wheel and start looking at the hundreds of other emotions. I need to start understanding these different emotions. Emotional granularity is being able to distinguish between feeling irritated versus feeling frustrated, feeling angry versus feeling upset, feeling infuriated versus feeling annoyed. So it's about broadening that emotional vocabulary. And if you name it, you will tame it. If you say, I'm feeling anxious right now, I'm feeling angry right now, it helps you process the emotion a lot quicker. It helps that 90-second rule apply, where the feelings will come and go, because feelings are visitors. They don't stay forever. They come and go. But the sooner you name it, the sooner you process it, the sooner you can move on. Okay? And when all else fails, distract yourself. Have a timed game on your phone, like Bejeweled, Blitz. Play chess. Chess brings you back to the present moment. Play any board game. It brings you back to this moment. Get into a playful state with people. Change your physical environment. And this is why they find smoke breaks to be so effective. And no, I'm not encouraging you to start smoking. All I'm saying is that there's a function beneath that smoke break, and you need to understand that part of that smoke break takes you away from your work desk and takes you outside. But you don't need to be smoking to do that. you can just take a break from your work desk, go and stand outside, change your physical environment. That really helps with moving us out of that state of being. So shift activities. If you're sitting in your bedroom, leave and go to the kitchen, make yourself a cup of tea. That helps with moving that energy around, okay? So we've come towards the end of our session. I'm now going to allow some time for questions. If you found the content of the session useful, we share a lot of content around mental health and well-being on our platforms on social media, on Instagram specifically. We have 2 platforms for adults known as @LightHouse Arabia and @Dr. Salia Afridi. We have 2 platforms for parents around parenting at Lighthearted Parenting. If you're looking for real, authentic parenting advice, have a look at Lighthearted Parenting. If you're looking for ways to cultivate emotional intelligence in your kids, as well as broadening your own emotional intelligence, look at Smart Heart Board Game. If you're looking at tools to connect with your teen and to point your teen in the right direction, we have @Lighthouse Insight for teens. We also have a TikTok page for our teens as well, @LightHouse Arabia. So feel free to check us out there. I'm now going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to allow for some questions. So if you can just give me a moment, I'm just going to have a look at the different questions here. Does green tea have caffeine? Yes, green tea does have caffeine. So I would really look at drinking green tea before 12 p.m. In the day. What they found is that when you drink any caffeine, coffee, if you drink a cup of coffee at 12 p.m., so at noon, it stays in your system for 12 hours. And so it's going to impact on your sleep that evening. So if you're going to drink coffee, make sure you drink it before 12 p.m. and make sure you limit your caffeine intake. Green tea does have caffeine, but it's obviously healthier than other forms of caffeine that we take in. But just make sure you're not drinking green tea in the evenings. Rather drink chamomile tea in the evenings. I find it to be so soothing. It's something that I like to do. I drink chamomile tea in the evenings. I spray lavender pillow spray on my pillow in the evenings. I drink magnesium B6 supplements because that helps with reducing muscle tension and getting you into a state of relaxation in the evenings. Is more than 8 hours of sleep good for you? They say the magic number is 7 to 8 hours of sleep for adults. For children need more sleep. They need 9 to 11 hours. But for adults, we need 7 to 8 hours. Sometimes if we sleep longer than that, we may also wake up feeling quite groggy. So making sure you're getting your 7 to 8, 9 hours max would be great. Please could you define social anxiety and how to deal with it? Social anxiety is the anxiety we experience when we are in social situations. Sometimes we may be in a group and we may be fearful of speaking up because we're going to be judged or people are going to think something of us. So we keep quiet when we're in the group setting. We don't like getting to a party and we're the only person of our friendship group there. We avoid certain social situations. We struggle to go on coffee dates with certain people. We will rather stay at home. So, if you're finding that your anxiety is impacting on your ability to function socially, it can even be over WhatsApp. You're on this WhatsApp group and everybody comments and everybody posts stuff, but you are too fearful to post something. You're scared that people are going to judge you. You think twice about sending something on the group. You think twice about posting something on Instagram because you you worry about what other people are going to think. That is all aligned with social anxiety. And how do we deal with it? Well, it really helps to, journal about the thoughts that come up, what it is that I'm thinking in those social situations, so that you can start challenging those thoughts, or to get into a therapy process yourself. I believe that therapy is one of the greatest investments I've made in my life. I am still in a therapy process. My therapist resides in San Francisco, and I meet with him every 2 weeks over Skype. And I find it to be such a great investment in myself and in my personal growth, and learning more about my triggers, learning more about ways to cope with different situations, learning to understand myself better. What is the name of the board game again? So the board game that I created is Smart Heart Board Game. I'll pop it in the chat for you. It's a game that aims at facilitating emotional intelligence in kids. It's a parent's window into a child's world. It helps children learn how to express their feelings better, and the parent learns about what's going on the playground, in the classroom, on play dates, on the sports field. It's a non-threatening way for children to speak about serious issues, and it gives parents a model for engaging in those meaningful conversations with a child. So if you're interested in learning more about it, you can go and have a look at it on Instagram at Smart Heart Board Game. We actually have a sale on at the moment. So yeah, if you're interested in looking into that, you can go and check it out over there. What are the symptoms of more permanent anger problem? I get angry quite easily. So when we're thinking about, an anger problem where you are getting angry quite easily, where you are looking back at certain situations and you're feeling really embarrassed, like, why did I say that? You look back a lot of the time and you think, gosh, I overreacted in that situation. I had no control in that moment. I flew off the handle. I reacted. These are some symptoms of anger issues, or you throwing things around the house, or you slamming doors, or you experiencing road rage. These are all examples of anger issues, but there's usually an underlying feeling there. There's an underlying need that isn't being addressed. And you need to get to the bottom of that. You need to understand what's going on here. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools to get to still the mind, to start finding out what's happening in my body, teaching me not to fly off the handle immediately, learning how to just sit with difficult emotions, even during a meditation. There's sometimes when I meditate and I feel so bored, I'm like, oh gosh, please couldn't this finish now? But I sit with a feeling of boredom. I don't just get up out of the meditation. Or I feel a bit irritated in the meditation. I maybe didn't like the music I selected for my meditation. Anyways, I sit through the irritation. By sitting through the difficult emotions, how that translates to the real world is you're sitting with a friend on a coffee date and they say something that's irritating. You don't react in that moment. You learn to sit with your own irritation. You learn to name that emotion to yourself and say, right now I'm feeling very irritated with what she just said. Okay, let me just sit with it a bit before I respond, before I react in that moment, right? How can we cope with anxiety from experienced like trouble from family members, like brothers fighting and parents? I'm not sure I understand the question. How can we cope? I think what I'm hearing is that we cannot, we can't choose our friends. I mean, we can choose our friends, we can't choose our family, right? Okay. So often it's very hard to get away from family members who can be quite critical or triggering or explosive. And so you need to learn how to set mental boundaries with these individuals. You need to learn how to be in their company, but not absorb what they are saying. Sometimes I say to my clients, imagine you've got this volume button in your brain, and you can turn the volume up when someone speaks, or you can turn the volume down when someone speaks. You're able to mute people yourself. Okay, we don't need Zoom and all of these fancy tech equipment to mute people. You can mute people in your day-to-day living. The way you do it is you turn the volume down when they speak in your mind. And you, in your mind, say to yourself, that's your truth. That's how you see things. Or you can even respond when you don't agree with something that they're saying. You can say, it's interesting that you think that. Or I'm sorry that you think that. Or I'm sorry that you feel that way. I don't feel that way, but I'm sorry to hear that you feel that way. So I'm not taking in what you're saying as my truth. That's your truth. So setting those mental boundaries, like I said, there's a great video online called Observe, Don't Absorb. Okay, it's by a psychologist. You can just Google Observe, Don't Absorb technique, and it shows up. It's an 8-minute video where he speaks about dealing with narcissists. But I share it with clients just in general when it comes to dealing with difficult characters, dealing with challenging people. Okay. Is anorexia caused by anxiety, and how do we deal with it? So people who experience anorexia usually have perfectionistic tendencies. So the need to be perfect, and perfectionism is rooted in anxiety. And so, yes, it is having more of an anxious temperament. It is wanting to control something in our environment, and the only thing we feel that we can control is our food intake. And so we start going to extreme and obsessing over our bodies and our food. And how do we deal with anorexia? That is a serious mental health condition, and the way we deal with it is we get professional support. And I would recommend that whoever is experiencing anorexia, that they see to it by getting appropriate support through the help of a clinical psychologist, a licensed clinical psychologist. At the LightHouse Arabia, we have a team who deal with eating disorders per se as well. So it would be, them getting under the care of a medical doctor, a psychologist, and a psychiatrist often. So it's really quite an important thing. And if you yourself want to become equipped with knowledge around mental health, at the LightHouse Arabia, we run a mental health first aid training, which is the equivalent of physical first aid, but for mental health conditions. So you can learn how to be the first responder to someone in your organization, at work, on your team, at home, who may be struggling with a mental health difficulty. And you can learn the signs of anxiety, depression, substance abuse. You can learn how to be the first responder to approach this person, to have a mental health first aid conversation with them, and to get them the appropriate professional support. So if you'd like to learn more about our mental health first aid trainings, we offer one for adults where you can learn how to do first aid on another adult, or we offer the adult to adolescent program where you can learn how to provide first aid to a child, or we offer the teen to teen first aid where teenagers can learn how to give first aid to their peers. Okay, so these are all the different programs that we run at the Lighthouse, so you can upskill in those departments. Please, can you repeat the part about humming? Okay, so the way that we activate the vagus nerve and the way that we increase vagal tone in our bodies is through humming, through singing. So when you hum, you're activating the vocal cords, which are linked to the vagus nerve. Humming and going right? When you go it is activating the vagus nerve as well. And it is the frequency of the universe. And we find it in a lot of spiritual practices to be very beneficial to bring about calmness and healing. So if you would like to do that, you can hum in the shower, you can sing in the shower. If you have a beautiful voice, sing in the house as well, right? I can't sleep more than 3 hours a night, and this is going on for years. I've tried melatonin as well as herbal remedies, but they don't help. Surprisingly, I don't feel tired during the day, but I know that a good night's sleep is important for many reasons. What can I do to get more sleep? So something I will share with you is that your sleep routine needs to be that of a baby's sleep routine. Like let's imagine for a second that you have a newborn baby, and it's time, for their bath, and it's time to get them into that bedtime routine. You're going to make sure that the lights are dim. You're going to make sure that they're in comfortable pajamas. You're going to make sure that they've had their milk. So you're going to make sure that they have all of these necessary things to help them get into a good night's sleep. The same way you need to approach yourself. Yeah, I would look to limit your caffeine intake for a start. I would look to have certain practices in place. So before I get into bed at night, I make sure the lights are dim. I make sure that I have my chamomile tea that I'm going to drink. I make sure that I have my lavender pillow spray. I make sure that I have my magnesium B6 supplements that I'm going to take. I make sure that I'm spending less time online, because the blue light that emanates from the phone is the same light that surgeons use in theatre when they're operating on a person at 2 a.m. in the morning, which alerts the surgeon to the fact that they must not fall asleep. Now, that same blue light emanates from your phone, which delays the release of melatonin in the body, which is our body's sleep hormone. So making sure that you are not on a device before you get into bed is going to be a real game changer. Making sure that you may be engaging in a reading exercise where you're reading a book, not on your phone, maybe on a Kindle where the light can be dimmed, or in a normal paperback book. And getting into that habit can be really, really helpful. I would also suggest exercising first thing in the morning. Do not exercise in the evenings, because if you exercise in the evenings, it gives you energy, and it's hard to get into a state of relaxation soon after that. So if you're struggling to fall asleep at night, rather move your exercise routine to the mornings. You're going to find that it's going to be easier to get into that 11 p.m., 7 a.m. sleep routine. And remember, you cannot be part of the 6 a.m. club if you are not part of the 10 p.m. club. You cannot be part of the 5 a.m. club if you're not part of the 9 p.m. club. You need your 7 to 8 hours of sleep to be able to do that. Okay, so get into that sleep routine. So I'm going to take one more question. Do you meditate? If so, can you please suggest how to start? Maybe recommend some books or websites for the beginners. So yes, I do meditate, but I will tell you a story that 4 years ago, I thought it was something that I would never be able to get into, because I'm just a busybody and I love my running, and I find long distance running to be the thing that gets me going and reduces my stress. But I got into a meditation practice because my healer at the time said to me, there's no right or wrong way to meditate. And your mind is going to wander, and you're just going to need to bring your mind back to your breathing. So every time your mind wanders during a meditation and you start thinking about, what am I going to eat tonight? And what should I wear to that event? And, should I invite that person to my party? Bring your attention back to your breathing, because as soon as you bring your attention back to your breathing, you strengthen that muscle of meditation. And it can be a 5-minute meditation that you do, or a 1-minute meditation that you start out with. You can download the Headspace app or the Calm app. These are great apps to get you into a space of learning how to meditate. But I would start small, and I would start today. You can even meditate when you at a traffic light. Don't check your phone while you're driving. When you get to a traffic light, stop and just focus on your breathing for a minute. Engage in a mindful minute of just focusing on my breathing. Okay. You can meditate when you're transitioning from one meeting to the next. Take a minute, a mindful minute, where you just focus on your breathing. And day by day, just increase it a bit. Okay. So this brings us to the end of our session for today. I thank you all for attending. I thank you all for your active participation. I'm sorry that I didn't get around to answering all your questions, but feel free to DM us on Instagram if you have any questions. Go onto our pages, check them out. We'd be happy to assist you there. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.